Some of the qualities of God that are negational, salbiye. One is that God is not murakkab, God is not compound. God has no combination, no parts. Okay? God has no jism, means God has no physical mass. God is not a physical object which is three-dimensional. God is not mar'i. Mar'i means what? Visible. So God is not visible. You cannot see God by your eyes. Because the only thing that you can see by your eyes are the things which have limited space. They occupy a space. If something can be seen by our eyes, it means that it is a finite being. It's a limited being. God has no sharik, no partner. You cannot find anything like God. Okay. This is a list. Now let us start arguing for some of the major qualities of God. You remember we said the arguments that we used to prove the existence of God, they can also help in proving some qualities of God. Of course, they themselves varied. Some of them can help us with few qualities of God. Like, for example, argument from design proves what? That there is an intelligent being, knowledgeable being, that has power also to create. So knowledge, intelligence, and power of God can be understood through the argument from design, in addition to the existence of God. But some of the arguments can help us further. For example, argument of wujub and imkan, which we call it what in English? Cosmological argument, yeah? We talked about three arguments. So one of them was cosmological argument, burhan al-wujub wal-imkan, which is based on the concept of necessary being and contingent being. Okay, you remember? We talked about this in details. God is necessary being, is wajibul wujud. And remember, we argued that when things exist, so it means that existence for them is either necessary or it is just possible. If they believe that there is necessary being, so it means that they have accepted God. If they say no, everything is not necessary, everything is possible to exist and not to exist, when we say these things cannot come into existence unless there is a cause for them which brings them to existence, which necessitates their existence. And then if that cause is accepted to be wajib, we say alhamdulillah. If they say no, even that is mumkin, it's contingent, we say what about the cause of that contingent? And we said in the end of the day, we have to reach a point which is not conditional, which doesn't depend on something else. Otherwise, this can never come into existence. We discussed this in details. Anyway, that argument showed that God is wajibul wujud, necessary being. Or in other words, that argument showed that there must be a necessary being. Now, the question is, can a necessary being be composed of different parts? No. Why? Because if it is composed of different parts, it means that it depends, it needs. Okay? So it means that without them, God cannot exist. While we said that wajibul wujud is something that it exists because of itself, not because of anything else. Even when I say it exists because of itself, you shouldn't think that it means that it has created itself. No, it has not created itself. It means that it doesn't need to be created. His essence is enough to be there. So, to have parts is not compatible with being wajibul wujud. Is it clear? To have jism is also very easily understood. That is a problem. Why? Because anything which is jism, anything which has physical mass, which has 3 dimensions, has parts. Okay? And since God has to have no parts, so God doesn't have any jism. Also, jism is limited and finite, and God should not be finite. Also, we cannot see God. God is not visible because it has no jism. It has no physical body. So all come quickly, one after the other. Then, what about time? Can God have a fixed time? Even if it is big, 1 million years, 1 trillion years. No. Why? Because to have a time frame, it means that before that and after that, God doesn't exist. Wajibul wujud does not depend on anything. So why it didn't exist and it came to existence? You cannot explain why it didn't exist, and you cannot explain that if it was not existent, why it came to existence. Okay? Who brought it to existence? So, God has no time. God has no change. God is not changeable. Because change is something which always comes with time. Actually, philosophers say time is the quantity for understanding changes, which are gradual. Inshallah, in philosophy, you study that there are 2 types of changes. One is kawn fasad, okay, which happens at once. One is gradual, which we call it haraka. So 2 types of changes: immediate, at once, and gradual. At once is called kawn fasad. Like, for example, when you go fast and you hit the wall, okay? Moving towards the wall is gradual, but hitting the wall is not gradual process. It happens at once. Is it clear? You cannot say even hitting happens in a gradual process. No, because either you have hit or you have not hit. You cannot say, hitting also took time. No. Moving towards the wall takes time. This is haraka. But hitting the wall is not haraka. It's happening at once. Anyway, any haraka which is gradual change, at-taghyir at-tadriji, has to have time. What we have used as time framework is the movement of sun and earth. For our convenience, we have used the movement of sun around the earth or earth around sun. For calculation, it doesn't make difference. In the past, and even today, when they want to calculate, they imagine that sun is going around the earth, but it doesn't make difference. Anyway, this motion of sun and earth, or earth around sun, is only one of the motions that exist in the world. But because it is available to all human beings, we have used it to come up with this standard time. We have year, we have months, we have week, we have days, we have hours, we have minutes, we have seconds. And as you know, of course, different traditions have different ways of calculating their years. Some of them, their years are longer, some of them are, smaller. Anyway, what is important is that time is not this. This is only one possible time. Yeah? We are using the time of the movement of sun and earth as our basis. Otherwise, any motion has a time. Then I want to a little bit explain when we say God has no time, what does it mean? Although I have already said this, but to make it a little bit clearer. When we say God has no time, it doesn't mean that God is a very old being. God has been there for many, many years and is going to be there for many, many years. Because this means that God is affected by time. God is existing within the framework of time. No, this is not our concept. When we say God is eternal, it means that God is timeless, not that God has very old timing. Okay? Because sometimes philosophers discuss about even the physical world to be eternal. Some philosophers believe that they have always existed in a form or another. I don't want to discuss that issue now. But what I want to say is that certainly in the case of God and all mujarradat, all the abstract beings, when we say they are azali, they are eternal, it means that they have no time. They are timeless, not that they have very long time. God is timeless. For us, it's difficult to understand how something can be timeless. Why? Because we are very limited. In the same way, for us, it's very difficult to understand how something can have no space. Because we are used to do things and see things always in a limited space. Okay? But God has no time and God has no space. So you shouldn't think that God has been in all times. No, he has not been in all times. He has been totally free from time. In the same way, when we say God has no space, it doesn't mean that God is in all spaces. God is not in all spaces, because if he's in all spaces, he means he is limited. Okay? So if someone asks you, does God exist in this room? What do you say? If you want to speak accurately, you cannot say God exists in this room. God doesn't exist in this room. But at the same time, you can say that this room is not far from God. It's not that you have found a space in which God doesn't exist. Because when we say God doesn't exist in this room, you shouldn't think that it's like a person who is now away from this room. So he is not aware of this room. He is not present here. So God is present everywhere without being settling or dwelling in any space. Okay? The same is with us. Is God inside us or not? If you mean by inside, like an internal organ, no. But if you mean by God being inside us, it means that we are not separate from God. Yes. Okay? So, Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam says something in this line. داخل في الأشياء لا بالممازجة. God is in everything, but without being mixed with them, without becoming part of them. وخارج عن الأشياء لا بالمزايلة. And God is outside everything, but not being separate from them. Okay? So this is something that you have to remember. Even the relation between your soul and body. Okay? In this aspect is similar. Is your soul inside your body or outside your body? If you say by being inside body like your heart and kidney, no. Soul is not inside body. But if you mean that even inside your body has connection with your soul and soul is not disconnected from inside, yes. Is soul outside body? If you mean by outside body like another person who is outside me and has no connection with me, no. But if you mean by being outside me that it's not limited to my body, yes. Okay? So, you cannot use term inside and outside for God or for soul in the same way that you use for physical objects. Two physical objects, it's very clear how one of them can be inside or outside the other. But when something is material, is physical, and the other one is not material, and you want to use the concept of inside and outside, you have to be very careful. So, when we say God is eternal, it means that God is timeless. When we say God has no space, it means God is not in any space, no matter how big it is.